Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world. With self-care strategies from Chinese medicine, functional medicine, Ayurveda, neuroscience, and beyond. I'm your host, Brody Welch, a licensed acupuncturist and transformation catalyst, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. One of the questions that comes up a lot in my coaching practice is what to do about limiting beliefs. Deep down beliefs that we may not even be conscious of that could be perpetuating behaviors that we don't want to have in ourselves or holding us back from growing in directions that we'd like to be growing. With me today to help us figure out how we can identify and root out those beliefs that may be holding us back is a super badass woman who I have the privilege of calling my friend and colleague in the coaching world, Lael Petersen. Lael is a mother, a former therapist, and now life coach with over 18 years experience helping women and their families thrive. She leads an online community of women committed to prioritizing their health and mental well-being. She combines her professional experience as a therapist with her own healing journey to provide coaching that is holistic, practical, and fun. You can learn more about Lael's work at laelpetersen.com, and the link to that will be in the show notes. Today's episode started out as being an exclusive conversation available to my Inner Alchemy members, but since they've already had a chance to hear the conversation, I figured I would repurpose it for the podcast because it is so valuable and you're going to want to take some notes. Hope you enjoy it. Hey everyone, I am here with my friend and colleague, Lael Petersen, who has been a practicing therapist for the past 18 years and who is currently a life coach, who I know from the yoga health coaching community. And we're going to talk about limiting beliefs and how to identify them in the moment, and how to get rid of them. So if that is of interest to you, you'll want to keep watching. Lael, thanks so much for being willing to have this discussion with me today. I'm really excited about it. So first off, just like right out of the gate here, how can people come to identify a limiting belief?
It's a great question. So I think that limiting beliefs are really anything that keeps you small. Anything that keeps you from feeling better in the moment or in the future, and anything that keeps you stuck. So if you are feeling any amount of discomfort, it's a great opportunity to consider, what am I thinking that may be contributing to my level of discomfort? And that's kind of the pathway in for discovering your beliefs, some which may be limiting.
So if we're uncomfortable in any moment, we can look at what are we thinking?
Absolutely.
At that moment. Right. And this is obviously going to be more difficult if we're actually having a conversation or something. Like if we're in the thick of it, it's obviously there's the potential for it to be, there's a lot coming at us in those moments, and it can be hard to kind of get a sense of what that is. I'm curious if you have techniques to help us identify like what's coming up for me right now, or like, what is this? Like, I'm uncomfortable. We're having this interaction and I'm not feeling.
I mean, it might sound silly and you might not practice this at work right away. You might try it out with someone who's willing to play with you, but that's exactly what we need to do. We need to start making the unconscious conscious. And the way we do that is by naming out loud what's happening. So I'll give you an example. So my husband comes to me the other day and he says, what's this something you spent money on that was what? And immediately I'm feeling busted.
Yeah.
And ashamed. And so in that moment, I can feel myself uncomfortable, right? I'm not sure what I'm feeling. And so I just stop in that moment and say, I'm feeling something right now. I think I'm feeling embarrassed. I think it might be shame. I need a minute.
And so you're identifying what's going on for you. You're trying to name it as best you can. And absolutely. You are claiming some space around that.
Absolutely. And so this is a great person to practice with, because this person, my partner in particular, knows what I'm working on.
Yes.
I don't want to operate from outdated beliefs or old patterns, which would be to minimize or deflect or blame, or I really want to grow in that moment. And so it starts by being able to name for yourself out loud what is happening, what you are feeling.
Great tip there. So we identify it, and if this is a situation where we don't necessarily want the other person, like the person maybe is not a supporter, maybe the person is someone that we don't know very well, or it's not they haven't earned the intimacy to be with us in what we're working on, and so but we can still potentially notice it for ourselves in those
Yeah,
moments.
or you can have a one-liner that you say like, "That's a great question. I need a minute."
I like it. I like it a lot.
Something that cues and provides you with the space, and to know that right away you're not gonna be good at this. You're not.
Mhm.
It just takes practice, like any habit, like any skill. It takes a while to get more comfortable and quick at identifying what you're feeling so that you can identify where your thinking is.
Yeah, really important to remember that any new tool, we're going to be clumsy with it at first. And
For
it's
sure,
good to, and that's why it can be really nice to practice with people that you trust.
for sure.
So once we have identified, I know that probably a lot of people know what one of their limiting beliefs are. A common one, like I'm not good enough, for example, if we can take that as an example, that once we've identified a core belief, what can we do to soften it, change it, have it have less power over us?
So that's a great question. The brain loves patterns, right? The brain loves repetition. This is why
Yes.
bad habits stick and good habits stick. And once we figure out how to do them, we can have momentum with them. So I love the two-column technique. It sounds really basic, but the brain really likes it. So you write in one column your outdated belief, and you might have several, right? And you can even keep a running list. And then on the other column, directly across from it, you write your new belief. It doesn't have to be a belief that you believe 100% yet, but you do have to believe in it somewhat. There has to be some element of truth for you.
So lying to ourselves is not a great idea, but if we can get in touch with just some sort of like, well, I'm alive and I'm part of all that is, I must be worth something, right? So I'm going to grant myself that as something to build on.
Absolutely. You can start anywhere. You can start with my mom thinks I'm valuable, or my grandma thinks I'm fabulous, or whatever you need to borrow from to get started.
Well, and really it's like the fact that other people see that in us. A lot of times what we are needing when these limiting beliefs come up, like I'm not good enough, is we're needing connection. We're needing validation that we're okay and that we're not going to die by getting kicked out of the tribe on the savannah and left for dead. And so it's one of those things where reminding us, like, even it's not like you're outsourcing your self esteem to your grandma, but you're reminding yourself, right? Oh, like I'm not going to be alone. I'm not going to be left behind. I'm not going to die. And that can help calm the nervous system.
For sure. I this leads me to the second step is which
Yeah.
begin to look for evidence of the new belief.
I love that. That's something that I've been playing with this year is compiling an evidence, a third column of evidence that my
Mhm.
new belief is actually something that is true. And
Yes.
so is this something that like to actually bring this into practice, do you recommend that people have like little notebooks or that they do it like first thing in the morning when they're meditating, or like what do you find works for your clients?
I think that having a piece of paper, it can be a plain old white piece of paper with two columns on it, that's a running document that you have posted somewhere that you can see it every day.
Okay, great. So a running document somewhere public, or so to you,
Absolutely.
somewhere that you'll see it.
Yes. In a notebook is fine, but unless you're going to your journal every day and looking at it, I find people do much better when it's posted on the side of the fridge, by the bathroom mirror, by the door on their way out of their bedroom, wherever where they can stop and look at it and say, outdated, updated, there's the evidence. And
Awesome.
then you can go to it and add to it as you discover more through the next coaching call or the next thing you read or the experience you have.
I was listening to a talk. I don't even remember who the therapists were involved, but they were about this idea that whatever core belief that we have, there's usually a polar opposite that's been dropped off, that's forgotten. And so it sounds like that's what you're talking about, is like bringing back a countervailing belief that is its opposite, so that it's not just the negative stuff running the show in our own heads, and that we then have a kind of a more balanced version of reality, perhaps. Is that kind of what you're talking about, like
Absolutely. And
sense of
it's
balance?
important too to remember that thoughts happen. That's just what the
Mhm.
brain does. The brain
Right.
thinks, and that beliefs are just thoughts that we decided were true.
hmm So
And
if we know that, we might not even necessarily need to believe like, oh, I'm awesome or I suck. That those two things like can be two sides of the same coin and can kind of perpetuate us in a trap. Do you have a way out of that? Like sort of like, oh, well, this might not be true either, and I'm just gonna, like, why would I want to just tell myself that?
well, that's where I think where the behaviors come in.
hmm
Because then I think
Okay.
this is the important third step is that you need to start casting votes for the kind of person you want to be. So if you want to believe that I am generous and kind, right? Like that's my new updated belief, then you need to begin to act as though I am. And sometimes you might be pretending. Can I tell you a story?
Of course.
When I was my younger, not so far ago, but a while ago, I really wanted to be healthy. And I was a smoker and a drinker. And I kept on seeing these people who ran. And I heard about people who were runners for, stress relief. And I thought, I really want to be healthy and I want to be a runner. But I was a smoker and a drinker and I didn't go to the gym. So I started acting like a runner and I bought running shoes and I subscribed to Runner's World magazine and started reading it. And I started putting on my running shoes and wearing them around town, kind of like you sometimes see sporty people wearing their sporty stuff. And I just started pretending like I was a runner before I ever was a runner. And eventually I started walking and then I started running and I became someone who completed several half marathons and a couple marathons and I became a runner. But I had to start acting like a runner first. And then, so in that way, if you want a new belief about yourself, then you need to start taking some small actions. And again, I ordered a magazine for my first action step. Like that wasn't
That's so great. It's like it
that
wasn't even like I'm gonna run a little bit. It was like I'm
no,
I'm gonna just get the trappings of what this looks like so that my
totally.
ego can kind of settle into being a runner.
Yeah, so I can just like hang
Ah,
out in the world that like these are what things that runners do. They read runners
nice.
So
Really
there's the third
interesting.
thing. You can work with the mind and work with the mind, but if you're not working with the physical body and what's actually happening in the moment, it's not going to work.
Speaking of the physical body as well, something that I've heard is that if you are suffering from depression, it may not be the best time to be investigating core beliefs because you might be, like because it could be very difficult to find that evidence or to be able to see the positive. And so if that's the case for someone that are there different instructions if someone is dealing with depression and like that literally they do not have the makings of serotonin available to them, or they're in a hormonal mood swing kind of a situation, and it's very difficult to see.
Yeah. I don't think they're different. I think the
Mhm.
work is exactly the same, but I think two things make it more manageable for someone who's in a place like that. One is that you're going to need to borrow from other people until
Okay.
you can have it for yourself.
Okay.
So that's when you're going to call your girlfriend and you're going to say, "What is it about me that you see that I don't?" Or you're going to ask your therapist, "What is it about me?" So that you can borrow some of those until you can believe them yourself. And the second thing is that your steps, whether they're your new belief that you want to have or the action you take, is going to be smaller. And you have to be okay with starting someplace that feels small. And that's the only way, right? You can't overwhelm yourself or you'll end up right back at the beginning.
And this is that Kaizen thing that we talk about a lot in our coaching groups, right? That idea that the smallest possible action is still a vote for that identity. It's still a step in the right direction. And that's
Absolutely.
super key.
Yeah.
That reminding ourselves that we are capable of change and that we're capable of action means that we're in a growth mindset, that we're not fixed, that we're not sentenced to this belief system forever, even.
No, you're not
Yeah.
unique. Have
One
you
thing that I learned, sorry, what was that?
I was gonna say, have you heard that idea that you are always changing anyway?
Yeah,
Right,
right.
like the body is changing anyway, and it in some ways, the body is moving in a place of degeneration.
We think about that in Chinese medicine all the time, right? That you are essentially your matter and energy changing all the time, and that we're having construction and deconstruction projects happening simultaneously in every cell, in every tissue, in every organ system. And so yeah, like that we're never in flux. That's a lie.
Yes,
Or
so
sorry, we're always in flux. We're never stagnant. That's what I
yeah,
meant to say. Yeah.
so if you don't have to believe anything to know that that's happening for you. So it's just about trusting that the change is happening for you as well. And just casting one tiny pebble
Mhm.
in the direction that you want to go is enough to get the ripple effect happening.
Beautiful. Yes. One thing that I've learned recently in my investigation of core beliefs is that just kind of like we talk in Chinese medicine and in Ayurveda about constitutional types and like different sort of like innate temperaments that we have,
Yeah.
particularly. And some of us have a temperament where we are more likely to be impacted by the things that happen in the world. We're more sensitive than others. And that this is actually a good thing. If you were a victim of trauma early in life, not that that was ever a good thing, but the fact that like traumas or like things that happen might have shaped you, whereas somebody else might have just gotten through like without that event having quite the impact that it did for you, that you're also shapeable in a positive way. And I've thought of like learning that like so often people use that sort of like watery constitution or that idea that they are sort of changeable as like, oh, I'm weak, or that this is an excuse to put down their own temperament that they may have. But recognizing that if we have been shaped in a way, if we have been impacted by an adverse event, that we can also, that there is inherent in that is the fact that we are ripe for positive events to shape us as well. And so I just think that was kind of a cool way of befriending our constitution.
Did you read that somewhere or hear that somewhere? Or is that
Yeah,
just
that
something
was in
you
this
know?
Never Enough summit that I've been listening to.
That's great.
Mhm.
Which is just highlights
I'm
again
pretty sure it was Kelly McGonigal, actually, if I can attribute it correctly. I was listening to a whole bunch of
great.
lectures. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It just reminds us that that part of our recovery or our healing, whether that's physical or emotional or mental, does it benefit from us being around other people who help us untwist our thinking. So your perspective changed, or was your new belief was confirmed when you heard someone else speaking in such a way. And so that's why being a part of a group or being in a coaching scenario or listening to podcasts just helps you become and think more like and act more like the person you want to be. It helps untwist that thinking.
Absolutely. And I think actually just the fact that people are aware that this is like you're not special if you have a belief that you're not enough, right? That like that
Yeah,
there's so many people that have this belief and it's almost evolutionarily with us, right? Because of like dominance hierarchies and social status. Because at one point in human evolution, we absolutely needed to be good enough in order to not be left for dead. And so the fact that like these are perpetuating into modern society, especially, right? That the signifiers of power, however we think that we need to stay safe, whether it's our job or our appearance or how many people love us or our romantic partners or all these ways that can manifest. And that really it's ultimately, if you can think about it as like sort of from that self-compassionate perspective, that, oh yeah, right, it's sort of innate in all humans to want to survive and to want approval of the tribe and to want to be able to contribute to other people's well-being and all of that. And so
absolutely.
therefore like that can maybe take away some of the shame that we might layer on to having a limiting belief in the first place.
Yeah, right. Congratulations, you're human.
Exactly, just like everyone else, and therefore worthy, right? And therefore imperfect and flawed and still worthy,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
inherently okay. Anything else that you would like people to take away from this conversation about limiting beliefs and how we can address them in our own lives?
I think the final thing that I might say that I think is a lot of fun when you're doing this kind of work is to use the power of visualization. And I think this taps into a lot of different parts of ourselves to be able to really imagine and then feel and begin to embody the kind of person who fill in the blank. And that, there's tons of research done on the power of visualization and identity evolution and this idea of imagining our future self behaving in such a way. And it can actually be fun to, just like we like to dream about an upcoming vacation or plan ahead about something that we're looking forward to, we can use that same practice to help us embody more of who we want to be with this new updated belief.
I love that, and that's actually sort of a movement from yin to yang via the wood element or the liver.
Yeah.
Really, the liver is what's responsible for imagination and
Mm,
creativity and, like, projecting into the future. Like, that's if you're imagining yourself in the future, it's your liver's spirit or the hun
right.
that is doing that, and that's literally, so and we move from water to wood to fire to earth to metal in around the five element cycle in Chinese medicine. And so that idea of taking something that is that is within us and we're wanting to bring it outward, it's like moving it on a continuum where it's more likely to be or it has more power,
Yep. Great.
really.
Love it.
Wow, this has been such an enlightening and useful and practical
Good.
conversation, Lael. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure.
If you've got a healthy curiosity, you want to know how you can be doing right by your body and how to live a more mindful, streamlined life in accordance with your values. While I love that you tune into the show every week, are you taking action? If not, why not? Here are the top 3 roadblocks that could be holding you back. 1. Thinking that knowing is doing. They're different things. Knowing the properties of verbs is different than actually taking them. Knowing how to change a habit is different than actually changing up your routine. Knowing is the first step, but the second, third, fourth, and 100th steps involve action. Number 2, thinking that because you're smart and used to being successful, that you need to do it all yourself. This one dogged me for years as an independent-minded overachiever. That is, until I realized that 1, I can't see my own blind spots, and 2, I don't know what I don't know. Now, I'd much rather work with a guide who can point out the shortcut for the path I want to travel rather than get lost in the woods alone. Not only is it way easier, but I'm more likely to show up for myself if I've told my coach or my mastermind partners what I'm trying to do. Reason number 3, thinking that you don't have the money. What we spend money on is a reflection of what we're prioritizing. Maybe it's time to prioritize you. I'm opening up my calendar for a handful of one-on-one coaching clients. I've helped thousands of women break up with stress, optimize their habits, mood, hormones, weight, and vitality with integrative body-mind tools from Chinese medicine, yoga, neuroscience, coaching, and ancient wisdom. Just as importantly, I pour my heart into each of my clients, and you will feel that love in every single interaction. If you're ready to feel more calm and confident in your own skin, start feeling younger every year, feeling like you're at the center of your own life rather than just getting through it, and feel loved and supported in the process, head over to the Work With Me page at brodywelch.com and apply to work with me one-on-one. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. Thanks for listening today. To check out the show notes, get on my email list, or drop me a line, head to brodywelch.com. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. I'd love to hear from you. If you learned something new or feel inspired to try something different in your life, I'd love for you to pay it forward by sharing this episode with a friend who you think could also benefit and give them a reason to listen. You'll be helping to create a world where we encourage each other to embody self-respect. Till next time, be good to yourself.